Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Fireside chat here in the Gridcoin Discord server. Today is April 5th, 2018, and we are here every week, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC, talking about all things Gridcoin. This is hosted by myself, Jay Ringo, and the Goblin Popper. Hey, Goblin.
Hello, hello.
And I like chocolate over there in the corner.
Hey, where am I?
I don't know why you're in the corner. I'm sorry.
Nobody puts chocolate in the corner.
Like he's not pure chocolate. He's like milk chocolates.
I'm relocating right now.
This week we're talking about how you can contribute to Gridcoin if you are not a coder, which is something we hear a lot about in the community. Because believe it or not, there are a lot of people who do not know how to code, but like what we're doing and want to be part of it and want to help. But before we get into that, every week we do a little news roundup of the week prior. This week there really wasn't that much going on. There's a little development here and there. You know, we're still working out CBR proposals, but you'll hear about that when it gets posted. The biggest news this week would be regarding the developer reimbursement proposal, which passed a few weeks ago, and there was a little confusion about whether or not it would be considered valid because of the vote weight. And we just heard back from Rob, who says that he's basically going to consider it valid. So moving forward, developers will be reimbursed for their work at an hourly rate of $60 an hour at a moving average, depending on the price of Gridcoin the month before. And of course, that work is considered valid based on what Rob decides and the developer who does the work. So if you're a long-standing developer, it's more likely you'll be reimbursed because we trust you and know why you're here and you have a reputation behind you. So if anyone does code, this is for coding work, by the way, this reimbursement. So if anyone does code, feel free to reach out in the Slack or the Discord, and someone will point you in the right direction. You can also just get right into it on the GitHub for Gridcoin research and just meet people and see what needs to get done. That's basically all we've got for news last week. So let's just jump right into the topic of how to contribute without coding. So we've got a lot of people here who are not coders, but who love to contribute to this community because it is a great community filled with scientists, a lot of people from the blockchain world, from old and new. We've got people who work with marketing and commercial aspects. We've got artists, and everyone likes to contribute in their own way. So you'll hear a little bit from us about what we do and how we like to contribute, and maybe just some brainstorming about what else people could do to help make Gridcoin what we know it can be for science. So I don't know, does anyone really want to kick this off? Does anyone have any awesome stories or awesome contributions that they know someone in the community has put forward?
I can think of there's a lot of articles written about how wasteful Bitcoin and Ethereum mining is, and if if one dedicated person just had almost, I don't want to say a template because that would almost be spamming, but if there was someone who was dedicated enough to going to each of these articles and specifically mentioning in the comments how Gridcoin solves this problem, I mean that could expose a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Copywriting or sort of marketing in a not spammy way. A bad thing would be to go around and just spam every post everywhere. It kind of would bring a bad reputation. But if you are part of these communities and you have some copy or some writing, or if you want to respond and engage in a conversation instead of just post and run, that is something that almost anyone can do. Get the word out that we are a thing, that we've been here since 2013, that Boink has been here since 2000, more or less. And that we solve a lot of the problems that a lot of people are thinking about, or present alternatives, if not completely solve the problem. And at a base level, just writing. Just one of my favorite things is reading articles that people write on Steam or Reddit and hearing their perspective and what they think we do or could do or how we could change things. Even if I don't agree with what they think, just hearing people get engaged just ultimately adds to the conversation. And it makes any solution that is implemented eventually a more in-depth and well thought out solution because you hear from more people. I know that's how I got involved here. I spent a lot of time just writing on Steemit right in the beginning. Just putting my ideas out there, asking people for their ideas, getting involved in the conversation. And out of that conversation came so far a roadmap and a white paper, and get to meet a lot of people and get to help contribute to the conversation that is turning into CBR and further developments down the road. And it also brings more people in to the more active community when they're part of the conversation. So I think that's the most base thing that anyone can do anywhere without getting into your subset of skills, whether you're a designer or a data analyst or whatever you are. Just being part of the conversation is great. I'm catching up on the chat here. Just so everyone knows, there's a text chat alongside the voice chat. So if you don't have a mic, you're welcome to join and get your ideas out here. We'll bring them in.
Figuring out a way to use Gridcoin as an actual currency, where can it be used? Maybe finding a niche where it could become the default currency, and making it the default currency for that niche and bringing along Gridcoin community members. I think would be very helpful if we can, if Gridcoin community members could, we are a community, and if we can provide each other things that we need, why not use it? Why not use Gridcoin for it? We could, keep the wealth, flowing between members within our own community, and we can, bring in new people that way. New people who can also contribute to Gridcoin. I mean, not just Gridcoin, but it could be completely unrelated. It could be some coding work that's completely unrelated. But you get paid in Gridcoin instead of in cash. And so if we can create a community that actually uses Gridcoin as a currency, that would be really helpful. And people are working on that. We have an escrow system and stuff like that. But if somebody could really take this to the next level, I think that would be really helpful.
Well,
Yeah, beyond. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
I was just gonna say, what I see as the next step, what Gridcoin could be used for. I mean, of course, everyone's gonna immediately assume random things you could buy, like grocery store or whatever, everyday items. But the way I see it really being used is processing power on Gridcoin. And so what I mean by that is like, if you need data crunched, because I think it should stay within the mantra of what Gridcoin is for, which is processing scientific research or processing general large data sets, and being able to have scientists purchase processing power, like BOINC processing power, without having to get like an Amazon web server or some major organization in order for them to have to pay for a giant subscription, do it all there. They can go through BOINC, right? And Diego, Diogo. Someone in the chat was saying this. Someone in the chat was saying this as well.
His name is Res.
Yeah, just rewriting it doesn't help. But yeah, so there's. I think this is a common thought in the community. This is kind of where we've all kind of talked about this before in the concept of microgrid, where we have small projects, and yeah, that's kind of where I see it being used. Is you pay for the processing power, because you mentioned before, right? Is analyzing this and becoming technically one of the world's largest supercomputers. Like we are technically in a way technically a grid, and if we get large enough, we do enough processing, we could push to the point of we are one of the largest supercomputers. And once we get that title, it's pretty easy to say, hey, for pennies on the dollar, for literally Gridcoin's a dollar, you can get some processing. You can do some anyone with scientific related data sets or data sets for a entrepreneurial or ethical cause. We will try and support you if you're willing.
I think that's a really good point. And what you said earlier about, just using, for instance, using Gridcoin at a grocery store. I'm not sure about how other people feel about this, but I don't think that's realistic. I think there's just far too much competition in terms of, other cryptocurrencies, not to just mention regular fiat currencies for people to actually use, like, for Gridcoin to really be the currency that people start using in supermarkets. I mean, I guess it's possible if we have this, like automatic, like we have like a shape shift or something like that automatically converts Gridcoin to that. But I don't think Gridcoin will be the way people think of Bitcoin now.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I think we'll eventually get that shape shifting going. But what you were saying before, like we need that guy who bought pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins, and they found a delivery person in the Bitcoin community who was willing to accept Bitcoin for the pizza. The delivery person paid for the pizza with cash and then just got reimbursed with Bitcoin. So it's like, I think this is a great way to contribute. Just build up that demand for Gridcoin within the community. Show the rest of the people that, yeah, we're here and we're able to trade with this currency built from a blockchain protocol that is based off of distributed computing. And anyone can really do that. If you need to buy a new video card, see if anyone in the community has an old video card they would accept Gridcoin for, or anything like that. And like you said, we do the escrow service and everything like that. Just do keep everything legal. But anyone can contribute with that way. Barton says that someone is selling a 1060 on Market Grid, which is the escrow service, I think, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that it's been up for about a week. Someone is offering to sell a GTX 1060 for Gridcoin. So there are opportunities like that out there. You just have to look for them.
And when it comes to more in-depth marketing stuff, like maybe not grocery stores, but computer supply stores or pie marketers, pie resellers, pie computer pies, not pie, not delicious pie. Like you can reach out to those, but don't just go out and start spamming these places, because we do have a bunch of people who have marketing backgrounds and who are organizing this sort of stuff, so we can approach more professional entities in a more professional way. But that doesn't mean you can't help with that. So come in and let yourself know that, make yourself known that you want to help with this sort of thing, and you can get involved at any level you want. So that is also an option. Maybe not like Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's now accepts Gridcoin. Like that's not going to happen anytime soon. But we can do other smaller things.
Well, so like I think it's easier not to say that you'd walk in and say, and I mean this is starting off topic, but I think it's easier to say, you're not going to walk into like Trader Joe's and say, hey, can I pay for my vegan gluten-free iced tea with like rupees, right, or like rubles or whatever. Like they're not just going to be like even though that's a real currency, they're probably not going to take it, right? But that being said, in the real world, you could have various other currencies in your bank account, but if you use a credit card, it does the conversion, right? And I think it's easier to think of it in that sense of Gridcoin's not going to be accepted in terms of like, yeah, pay me Gridcoin. It's going to be like, no, it's widely accepted enough where in the back end, it's just auto-converted to whatever you're trying to charge, right? It's just counted as, that. Does that make more sense? I feel like that's an easier point to reach than Gridcoin just being what you could pay with.
Yeah, that makes that might take some time just because you got to get that back end built, and that's not an easy thing to do. And that actually requires coding.
Yeah, of course.
some ideas here going through the chat, like tech stores, Spark Fun, or like science supply stores, stuff that's related to Gridcoin. We can reach out to them. For example, Neurominer brought up that name-z.com. I don't know what that is, but it says we are now accepting Gridcoin as a payment option for website hosting and Minecraft servers. That's kind of cool. And after a little bit of work, we were able to get a bunch of Boink projects to accept Gridcoin as a form of donation instead of just dollars. They now will take Gridcoin, and that's just the beginning of what can be done in terms of just reaching out to smaller time sort of venues to get Gridcoin on the chart there. And we wouldn't be the only coin that does this. There are a bunch of other communities that directly reach out to companies and say, look, accept Gridcoin, and they'll accept 24 different cryptocurrencies and add Gridcoin to the list. So Gridcoin becomes one of the ones they accept, which is just a step in the right direction. So we've covered just writing copy or any sort of article that compares Gridcoin to other cryptocurrencies and says the great things about Gridcoin. And there are a bunch of really good resources to draw from on this. They will all be mentioned in the white paper. There's a Reddit thread that is on the Gridcoin US website that has a lot of just the pros of Gridcoin and engaging people in a conversation, not just spamming them about stuff. We talked about trying to reach out to other people to accept Gridcoin as a means of payment, or just trading items for Gridcoin among the community through Market Grid or through any way you can contact them. Getting involved in any internal conversations as best you can. I
think one thing that I really love contributing, right? I mean, I have a very basic knowledge of coding, but I don't really enjoy doing it. It's very time consuming for me, so I tend to just kind of stay away from it. And what I found is I like to do hobby stuff with my computers, and so I have a few Raspberry Pis in my apartment, and what I was able to do was like convert them to have wallets, dedicated wallets on them, where I'm more or less securing the network, and it requires almost really no work on my part. Requires very minimal basic computer skills to obviously get a Linux wallet up on the Raspberry Pi, and then once that's up, I just leave it running, and that's it. And I'm helping secure the network as a node on the network, and I do that both for the standard network and I do that for the test net, because I just like being able to kind of secure that. And I think any user who has who doesn't want to say process a ton and get their electric bill really high, like me, there's another venue of just download the wallet, make sure the wallet's running, and by having that active connection, you are an additional node. You help other people stay current and help secure the blockchain, right?
I think that's a great way to contribute, because it's the more nodes we have, the more secure our blockchain is, and the more secure a blockchain is, the more reputation it can have, the more security it has, obviously, and just the better it's looked at from the view of a blockchain enthusiast, let's say, who looks at this sort of stuff and says, look, your difficulty is only 0.2. I mean, can you really call yourself a blockchain at that point? That sort of stuff. So it's that securing the blockchain is the principal part of what we are. We have to have a blockchain in order to incentivize people to crunch Boink.
Responding to what Netflix said earlier, sounds like I'm assuming it's in response to what I said about Bitcoin. What Netflix said, it sounds like you're not even trying to compete with Bitcoin. I mean, so there's a lot of articles, especially on Steam, that have pointed out, how wasteful Bitcoin is and how much better Gridcoin is. And obviously, I agree with them, and I don't use Bitcoin, and I do think that the hashing is wasteful. But I think that the way, we would overtake Bitcoin at some point isn't by saying, oh, look how much better we are. It's by being that much better. We should just be able to show that, we are that much better, and we wouldn't need to say it. We wouldn't need to say, "Oh, come here and join us from Bitcoin." We're so much better. We don't need to. We don't need to start a war. We just need to, bleed Gridcoin, bleed Bitcoin dry.
I think it's a good way to put it. And there's one thing to start a conversation with someone, and it's another thing just to call out another community for being bad, because Bitcoin's not just bad. Bitcoin is kind of amazing from my point of view. And to start a war would actually probably be pretty bad.
Also, if we tried to start a war, realistically, the way I see that happening is we would get a sudden influx of users, right? A lot of GRC would probably be bought. It would suddenly become kind of like a pump and dump. We'd probably hit something close to 80, 90 cents per GRC. And then a lot of people who either didn't understand the platform or didn't really care about it much would probably drop off. So I think starting a war, or however you want to phrase it, getting really involved or trying to jam our heads right in the front line, right now, instead of doing the steady adoption rate, I think is just kind of detrimental over the long run.
Netflix. So I was talking about Gridcoin becoming a very specialized currency for science. So what I was saying was starting, finding a niche and then becoming used there, and then using that as a proof of concept to expand from there. I'm a fan of taking small steps, and just proving yourself in a very limited area before you move on. And regarding, and the other reason that, I wouldn't want to, put our, promote ourselves as a competitor to Bitcoin in particular is simply because that space is so crowded already. There's so many actors. There's so many actors involved. There's so much competition, especially, right now, just from fiat. Forget about other cryptos. I mean, if fiat is already hard enough, and yeah, I agree with you that we should try to expand into other areas as well. I just think it's the way you expand isn't. It's kind of like a a breadth first search versus a depth first search. If you know those terms from computer science, it's you either take one step, intend to you go in one direction, take one step, go back, go in a second direction, take one step, go back, etc. That's like a breadth first search, and then a depth first search is you take 10 steps in one direction to see what goes down that road. And I think if we can find a space where Gridcoin becomes the default currency, it will spread. Discord, the platform we're using right now, as far as I'm aware, started out as a platform for gamers specifically, but now look who's using it, right? So all I was saying was, we should try to create, a community that uses this and then expand from there.
You can do that. You can throw Netflix says I like to think of it as throwing seeds every which way and see what grows. You can think about it that way, but the problem is we have limited resources, and when you do that, you can end up wasting a lot of seeds. So if you have a niche that you are targeting from the beginning, which we are scientific, we are distributed computing, if you start in that direction right there, the seeds are going to grow there, because that's what we are. We help Boink quite a bit. So why not just go that direction and then step back? But Chocolate was saying with the breadth. So step there, come back a little bit, and then see what sort of sprouts out of that. And because we are a community of a lot of science-oriented individuals, it makes it easier for people to contribute to that sort of exploration, because we already have our little communities of science, whatever, that we're all part of. Some of us buy stuff from one website that we know would love what we're doing here, so it would be easier for them to reach out versus just cold calling some random store down the street who we don't know and they don't know us. And It's a little weird. Which I guess brings us into another way that you can contribute without having to code, which is find what you know what you know what you're good at, and then bring that to the table. For example, we recently, like almost a year ago, we went through a rebranding effort. And it was just started by, I think just one person in the community who was like, hey, our image is a little bit out of date. I think we should change it. A bunch of people came on board. And eventually there was a person, his name is Josh, who did the rebranding. And he came up and he said, hey guys, I'm a designer by trade. I'm pretty good at it. I'm here to lend you my time. Let me help out. And everyone said, great, we have an actual designer who can help us build this thing and make it look, symmetrical and beautiful, and give us a color scheme and give us everything you need with a professional-ish branding scheme and image to get out there. So he just came on, he offered his talents, he helped build this thing with the community, and then it turned into a vote, and the vote passed, and that's how we have our new logo right now, from just one person knowing what he's good at and how much time he can contribute, and being willing to work with others to build something that a lot of people really wanted to see get done. So, if you're a marketer, come into the community, see what's already happening, see if you can get involved. If you don't see anything happening, see if anyone wants to do something with you. If you have an idea, put it out there, and be willing for someone to say, let's hold back a bit when really not ready for it, or be willing to get pushback on it, because if you have an idea, you need to be able to defend your idea and why it should get done. But if you're a marketer, come in. If you are a scientist and you have an idea about what Gridcoin can do to help other scientists, come into the community and say, look, I'm doing this research somewhere, and I think you guys have this thing going that should maybe go in this direction instead of the direction it's going. What do you think? Bring ideas.
Well, yeah, so I actually, I mentioned that to someone yesterday on Reddit. I was on the Gridcoin subreddit, and I commented on something a while ago, and I actually got a response to it, and someone was asking questions about actually saying, like, hey, you mentioned the quote, doing your part, and like, what does that mean and how can I help? I'm fairly new to the group. And effectively, I wrote actually a good amount for it, a couple paragraphs at least. And what effectively I dissolved it down into was, it really depends on your skill set. It depends what you're capable of bringing to the table, as you pointed out. What I said was, I have more of an economic background, and so when I joined, I got the wallet installed and I had fun with that, and then I found Slack and I realized there was an economic channel on Slack, and I make comments every now and then, and I engage in conversation when I have the time. There's other people who don't even have that kind of skill. They're very, very, very much engaged or studied liberal arts, but they can still do things like edit papers and still engage in discussion and help our overall image when we go out and when we present ourselves. So regardless of your skill set, whether coding or not, there's still ways that you can get engaged and help, right? So I have bumped into people, and I have said that, and it is encouraging for a lot of people to hear that when they start to learn about Gridcoin, because most people, and we've had this conversation several times before, the kind of people that Gridcoin attracts are the kind of people who like to be very helpful. And we've seen this in the subreddit, we've seen this in Discord and Slack and all the other platforms, Steemit. So when you tell someone who wants to get into Gridcoin that it doesn't matter if you can actually code or not, you can help, I feel like that's actually extremely encouraging and very exciting for a lot of those people. I think a lot of them like to hear that, just based off the type of person that usually gets attracted by Gridcoin.
Absolutely, and I think one of the ways that almost anyone could help is getting eyes on things. So when, for example, we're doing the CBR proposal right now, we're getting pretty close to putting it out there as a poll, but we just want we want eyes on the proposal. We want it to be put in front of a lot of people before it gets put out there. We want feedback, honest feedback, and we want to hear the questions before we put it out as a poll so we can try to answer those questions preemptively in the proposal itself, which makes the whole polling process a little smoother, the communication's a little better, and you also catch typos, and we've been looking at this proposal for months and just reading it over and over again. So we don't know what's confusing anymore. So when someone who's never read it comes in and reads it and they're like, hey, this section makes absolutely no sense. What are you trying to say? And then force us to describe to you, the person who's reading it for the first time, what we're trying to say. It makes it so we can make the proposal a little even more clear, which makes everything just go smoothly. And anyone can do that. Even coders can do that with anyone as a background. And it is always incredibly appreciated when people do that, because we understand a lot of these proposals are pretty in-depth and fairly long, and it takes time to do it. And there's no more valuable resource than someone's time, especially for a volunteer endeavor, and it's beyond appreciated. So come into Slack or just here on Discord or anywhere that you see a post and give your honest feedback to it.
Also, what I found is some people, even if, and because I see people in the chat talking about, what can I do to help, right? And one of the users, I'm really bad with all these names, so I'm sorry, I'm not even really trying. Some of the users are saying, I don't really know of a skill I have that's specifically useful, right? Some things, even if it's just trying to come up with ideas, like one of the biggest ways that I think I've been able to try and help Gridcoin thus far has been trying to come up with go-to-market or overall concepts to move forward. Even if they don't get taken, it's still a thought exercise that helps kind of spur on. So if you have a silly idea, like I remember Chocolate mentioned months ago that he was like, I really wish this existed, X existed. And it turns out that actually already existed, which led on to a whole bunch of other ideas, right? Like the woo prop idea, where a whole bunch of other things came up because we found out that something actually existed, and other people who didn't know about it suddenly knew about it, and now there's a bunch of people thinking about how to use it, and can we enhance it, and what information can we pull from it? So even if it's just idea generation, even if it's just conversation, even if it's just throwing our name around in random posts on Facebook or the subreddit, or just helping people out with resource links, I mean, every little stupid thing helps, regardless if it's big or small, right?
Absolutely. Nem says, any use for project management or planning? Yes, but that's a tricky one because we're an open source community, right? So there's no like development team, there's no CTO, there's no CEO, there's no COO. We're not a corporation, we're not a company. If you want to hear sort of mine and Chocolate's and Goblin's philosophy about this, there was a whole podcast on it during the 1H series called the Community Corporation. But because we have none of that sort of leadership structure, and our developers are just a group of people, some of whom have spent a lot of time here and are respected developers like Raven, iFogs, Broad, the Charlatan, just listing off them head, there's more. And then there are also like the moderators or the ops, people who have been here for a long time who help to administrate some stuff, or like Barton, Barton, who runs the testnet coordinator. Neurominer helps with a lot of administration tasks. So if you want to help with that sort of project management or planning, just make yourself known that this is what you do and this is how you can help. And then when there is a task that needs someone with that sort of skill set to be done, you will likely be reached out to, or there will be a public call for help, like, hey, we need help getting this organized. We want to do a big outreach campaign. We need some marketers, anyone with marketing background. For example, when we started discussing CBR in the economics channel on Slack. I went on Reddit and I put out a call for anyone who has an economics background. And I think that's actually how I met Goblin. I just said, hey guys, we're doing some economic stuff. Does anyone have an economics background? It would be great to have you in the conversation. And people reached out and got involved.
Yeah, is there anyone else in the chat though that has a mic or even just can type fast and wants to share any ways that they've been thinking about helping out without coding, or any ways that they have been helping out without coding? I'd love to hear from other people because we've obviously, we talk a lot, so we'd like to kind of open it up more. So when you said the public node thing, so you're Nem, so you created a public node that you pretty much you keep online. Is that what that is? So I mean I don't. Okay. Yeah. So I don't officially do a node. Because I'm not really that fancy, but I mean, I keep my wallet just constantly active, right? So is there much difference between keeping a wallet up and active and being an official node?
I can answer that.
Which leads me to believe the answer is yes.
Well, there's two, right? So every wallet that's running and is online is a node in a network, right? Technically, just the way the peer-to-peer networking works. The prospect of an ad node or a full node is that, we have a list that we maintain on the wiki of specific ad nodes you can put in your config file, and then people can, what happens is when your wallet launches, it connects to those first. So they serve as sort of relay points. If you think of it as like a peer-to-peer network, they're like the central anchors connected to many other nodes. So the ad nodes or the full nodes are like the center points. It's not really centralized, but it's like if you think of like a federation of nodes, one ad node or full node connects to many other small nodes that may not actually be distributing as much data. So they send much more data, and they also share their connections with other people. So if you're an ad node, someone can connect to you, and your node will say, hey, here's all the IPs I'm connected to, and hands the list to your client, and your client says, okay, I'll try those. And it just goes on from there and propagates and helps you connect to the rest of the network, basically.
Yeah, so it's a jumping off point for like getting from a starting point back into the network. Okay. So what kind of work? So for the people who might want to even just do that, like add like an official node as opposed to what I do, which is just keep my wallet up like 24/7. Like how much actual technical expertise, how much time and effort does it actually take to get an official ad node?
Well, a lot of it comes down to your network. You need to have, a pretty good network connection. You need good bandwidth, high throughput. If you got like a gigabit connection, that's like great. But, obviously a lot of people don't have that. A lot of the ad nodes, especially the ones higher on the list, I know like iFox's nodes, Neurominer's nodes, he can correct me if I'm wrong, regularly see, upwards of 300, 400 peers connected to them. And as Neurominer just pointed out in the chat, there is a AutoNode script actually that you can run that will set up a full ad node for you. Most of the technical stuff comes in having the right kind of internet, having your ports forwarded correctly, just the networking side. It's not so much like knowing the code or anything like that.
And it's stuff that you can ask someone to help, and they will be able to walk you through fairly simply about like what you need to do to set it up.
Yes, definitely. And Neurominer posted in the chat the link to the the AutoNode script. It's for Ubuntu or Debian, and it's literally as simple as just running the script, and you basically have a full node by the time it's done. The networking stuff, obviously, you have to do, outside of the script, but that's between you and your router, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so wait, so our nodes are all on Raspbian or Linux, and our what was it on our and we have .NET only on the Windows. So we have.
Well, you can run a.
Can you run a server on Windows?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
okay.
You can run a full node on any operating system. It's just this script specifically is designed for those Linux distributions, just because it's a bash script. And I mean, you can run a bash script in Windows, but you need Windows subsystem for Linux. So it's just, that's the way it was written. Someone could take that script and modify it to be able to run on Windows, in like PowerShell or something like that. That would be possible.
Okay, cool.
And Diogo points out you can run it in Docker as well. Yeah, any kind of virtualization, you could run it in VBox, you could run it in Docker, Windows subsystem for Linux, as I said, anything like that, you can run the same script.
Awesome. Is there any reason not to set up a full node, or is there any way that too many full nodes hurt the network or pose a security risk?
Well, from your side, reasons you might not want to host a full node are if you have, your internet's not that fast. If you have bandwidth caps, you definitely don't want to, because you're talking, depending on the size of your node and how many connections you accept, you're talking many gigabytes per day, like maybe 100 gigs per day if you're one of like the top ad nodes, right? So it's really, from the user perspective, how much data do I want to send out? And is that going to be a problem with my cable company or ISP or whatever? Nems points out a good point as well. Because you're effectively opening your server or computer, whatever you're running the full node off of, up to the world by saying, hey, here's my internet address and this port is open, you do open yourself up to attacks. Obviously, I don't think anyone's out there going around, DDoSing Gridcoin full nodes, but it's something to think about and could possibly be a problem in the future. If you value your privacy, maybe don't, run a full node off your home network, run it off, a cloud instance or something like that.
Yeah, I do know. I mean, Neural Miner pointed out his nodes are running about 500 connections. The average wallet goes anywhere between 8 to I think 32 on some of the high ends. Usually mine sits around 24 or 36, depending on the time of day. And he says network in is about 34 gigs and network out is about 129. My wallet on a Raspberry Pi, I mean, so to kind of like the listeners, right? It's, you could do a full node if you have actual real hardware and a good bandwidth. For anyone who's not sure if they have that, my Raspberry Pi holds about 24 to 36 connections at any given time over Wi-Fi, and does about 7 gigs a week out. On the high end, usually it's no less than about 4 or 5 gigs out. So even just having your wallet open, I mean, technically, a node, setting up a node might be a little hard, and you have to open up those ports and everything. But I mean, even just having your wallet live, just open, sitting on your desktop or sitting on a little tiny Raspberry Pi or some hardware in the corner, right? Even that just does a lot, right? That's doing probably about, well, like whatever the math works out to be, like a quarter of what a real node is doing, but that's still a pretty good amount, right? So, also, anyone who's listening or listens to the recording of this, and you're not part of the Slack, and you are looking for non-code ways to assist or help out, I recommend going to Slack. I recommend checking out Steemit. I recommend maybe just being active on the subreddit. Subreddit's already pretty active. Any of those platforms, you can help out a newbie, or you can just write guides. I've seen some very non-technical people literally write up guides where the guide is just a centralized list of resources to use to do X, right? Like, hey, I want to start up my wallet on a Raspberry Pi, and the guide will be actually referencing either other guides or it'll be referencing other online materials, but it'll be just just congregating it, right? It's pooling it all in one location, and writing that in itself has significant value for the community, keeping that fresh and making sure those are all kept up and such.
That's a good point. Continuing the conversation is very important. So if you talk about something, in August and it hasn't been talked about in a while, bringing it up again isn't necessarily a bad thing, because the community will have probably grown by then. Some people will have probably forgotten about the idea, and all those reasons. For example, the gray list was brought up many times over the course of several years, and eventually it got built, but it took a lot of just talking about it and making sure it continued to be part of the general conversation and the atmosphere of the community, until it got to the point where there are a few people who had the time and the necessary skills to actually build the initial product, which is now starting to progress into something that's pretty useful, and hopefully will one day get automated and built straight into the protocol, which is pretty neat to see.
And actually, that actually just reminded me of two other things. One is, if you're feeling exceptionally philanthropic, another method that you can assist via not coding is actually to donate GRC, right? Or actually just like donate money, right? And I say that because and I'm not saying just like give it to people, right? But what you could do is, if you see something you'd like improved on the platform and you have some extra GRC sitting around, you can do what's called a bounty, where you set up a bounty to encourage people who can code to actually seek out and code the answer for that, right? So, I don't have that much GRC, but throwing 100 or 200 GRC and getting a pool started where you pool up a ton of GRC as a incentive for someone who can code is technically a way that non-coders can help, right? You commit some small value, even if it's just 5 or 10 GRC, right? We have thousands of users, so it can all kind of pool up. And then the other method is actually, if you're familiar with GitHub at all, while GitHub is used for versioning, and a lot of people who code would go on GitHub, you can still go on GitHub as a non-coder to comment on things, to ask questions on things, and in my situation, I can kind of read code and understand code. I'm just not very good at writing it, and I'm terrible at writing it. So technically, I could also maybe read it and say, does this make, I don't know if this makes sense. I'm not sure if this is written right. There might be a bug here, right? So you can point out things like that on GitHub as well by just commenting and having a conversation there as well. So yeah, like GitHub is, to some of the comments, GitHub is definitely like the pushing the very limits of non-coders, right? That's I'm going to be pseudo connected to the code. But that is just pushing that limit, and I figured, for anyone who was fairly technical, I don't really want to dabble in that, but it is another option if you'd like to, or if you want to get more exposed into the code world and you're just not currently a coder, you can always look at it and kind of experience it there, because Gridcoin is all open source. You can read all the source code and such on GitHub.
Yeah, that's part of actually my background. I got into GitHub and I'm like, oh my God, this is a little too much for me. But over time, you just get as a familiarity. It's just a matter of exposing yourself to it over and over again. And it's a great tool for bug tracking. If you find an issue in your client that just seems like, well, this is a bug that should probably be brought to the attention of some coders, you just go to the GitHub repo and you make an issue and you let it be known. And then a coder will either say, yep, we know about this bug, and they'll close the issue, or they'll ask for more information about what exactly happened to make whatever happened in your wallet happen.
Yeah, because I actually I spent over the last week and a half since our last session, since our last podcast, I actually spent some time to learn GitHub desktop and to learn more about GitHub, and it took me probably about like a day and a half to like get pretty good at it, or at least understand a decent amount of it. It's not very hard to install, it's not very hard to use, but to really understand it more and to understand what it's doing and how it's working, it takes about a day and a half, a couple days or so, based on your level of technical background. And I don't know, it's something that I know a lot of companies use. So it's for a lot of people, there's some added benefit to just learn it on the side, and using that as kind of a project to help jumpstart that learning is always a great idea.
Yeah, and it's the UX is not entirely intuitive, but Barton brings up that there are plenty of tutorials, and unfortunately there is no like Clippy that just opens up when you open GitHub, which there should be a Giddy. That would be pretty fun. See, you're trying to make an issue.
Feature request.
But there's plenty of resources out there to learn from, and yeah, at this point, I mean, Barton still yells at me when I do stuff that's not exactly correct, but I know enough to be involved in the community in the GitHub realm, and I'm always learning more about it. So don't be intimidated too much, but also know that if you do feel intimidated, you're not alone.
And I don't literally yell at him, for the record.
I think another good thing that people can do, especially if you're a university student, is to bring it up at the university. We are connected to BOINC, right? And BOINC is used at a lot of universities. A lot of projects are run straight out of universities. And I think BOINC could help a lot more universities than what we help right now. So if you have a professor that does data-driven research, ask them how they do their computing for their data. I mean, it's a great conversation starter for your professor. You get some points for that. You know, they get to know who you are. And then maybe you can mention BOINC to them. You don't even need to mention Gridcoin right off the bat. Just be like, why don't you use this giant supercomputer to crunch your data that you've been sitting on for 5 years? You don't need to wait for your labs to open up, or you don't need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for centralized access. And then at the same time, you can bring it to the computer science departments. And maybe the CSC and like the biology department can team up to make a university-specific BOINC project. This is the sort of like project management stuff that you can just go off and do, because you're just trying to bring your university a tool that will help them. That you might just not know about BOINC for some reason. And I have seen in the community people do, there are flyers and there are posters that a lot of people have just gone around and put around their cities and around universities that just show people what BOINC is. And I think they've done great things, just because when people learn about BOINC and Gridcoin, they're kind of just like, what? Why didn't I know about this before? And I would love to be part of this, because believe it or not, a lot of people do love science and would love to contribute. They just don't know how. Does anyone else have any sort of stories about how they've contributed, or any ideas and how people who really don't know an if from a then statement, how they could contribute?
Well, I was going to point out at some later date, either the next Fireside or the one after that, I'm planning on hosting a bit of a talk about testnet and how to get running on that. And I just wanted to bring that up here, kind of like hey, if you want to get involved in testnet, you don't need to know how to code. You don't need, really advanced knowledge. You just need, pretty, good understanding of how the wallet works, how Gridcoin works. And if you feel like you can help us test new features, cutting edge features, things that, there's a risk that it could crash your wallet or whatever, but we're running on, a different network, testnet. And if you want to contribute and help, I would suggest that you come to either the next Fireside or the one after, TBD, where I'll be talking in great detail about how to get involved in testnet and, get you from where you are now to up and running in just that one chat.
That's gonna be awesome. All right, yeah, we can bring that up. There's an example of how a couple people have recently contributed to the community. It involves coding, but there were, I'm pretty sure, non-coders who just helped test these out. It's a tip bot. So there's one built for Discord. I think there's one being built for Slack. There used to be one for IRC. It may or may not still work. But essentially, it is there where apparently the IRC one is dead. Rest in peace, buddy. But it is a way to just quickly exchange Gridcoin among community members without really having to go into your wallet. You send Gridcoin to your tipbot address, and then you can just tip other people who also have a tipbot address. And it's really useful, especially this even ties back to the very beginning when we were talking about just exchanging things among the community for Gridcoin to make that market. You can use the tipbot as the escrow. It's just pretty neat. So like ideas like those, and again, there were people who didn't code. I think the person who did the Discord one is Delta, who also happens to be coding a Boink operating system, which is pretty neat. But then there are people who didn't code who helped test all the functions, and they tried to break it for like 3 or 4 days just by doing random code. Like what's that called? You just throw random code.
Stress testing?
Yeah, there's a cool word for it too.
Penetration testing?
You're all wrong. We'll think of it later. Yeah, you can be parts of that sort of those sorts of projects.
Quality assurance. No.
It's like it starts with an M. It's like
Stress testing?
That's it. That's the one.
J-Rango, what are you trying to think about?
Nothing important, but we miss Technics. I'm out of ideas though. We covered a lot here about how people can contribute without having to code. Can anyone think of anything we missed, or does anyone have a story that of how they've contributed that doesn't have to do with coding?
I just want to make sure that to kind of before we wrap up, just to kind of point out that the Gridcoin community online is by far one of the most accepting and chill, easygoing communities, crypto communities online that I've ever really bumped into. So really, if whatever skill you think you have, coding, not coding, philanthropic, really anything you think you can offer the community, whatever it is, just literally just ask, right? Go on Slack, go on the Team Gridcoin Slack channel, go to the general channel and just say, hey guys, I'm new, what can I do? And I've seen that happen a bunch of times where someone just says, hey, well, sure, yeah, you can help out, what are your skills? And within about 2 hours, we find them either a job or we direct them into another channel to talk or to be a part of a specific sub-community. To have conversations there. So it really it's if you don't like any of the ideas we came up with or we presented, or you're not sure or you're hesitant, really it just comes down to go on the Slack channel, go to the subreddit, go to Steemit, and just ask. Just say, hello, I'm new, what can I do? And I can almost guarantee someone will say hello and try and invite you in. I've never seen someone really be downvoted for it. I've seen some posts be left alone, probably because of inactivity, depending on the time of day. But at the end of the day, it's really just up to you to actually just initiate the conversation.
Yeah, does anyone else have anything to add right here at the end? All right, and we'll just wrap it up on that. I completely agree with it, and I know a lot of people in the community agree with that sentiment. It was really easy to get involved, and I have never really seen someone just shut down or put away who wanted to help in a constructive way. So yeah, get involved, and we'll see you in the next Fireside Chat. It's either going to be Barton doing the testnet talk, or we will have a different topic if the testnet will be a week after that or something like that. But it will be here in the Gridcoin Discord server, as always, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC. And keep on crunching, folks. Oh, and as an addendum here, if you want the Slack invite, just mention it anywhere, and someone will reach out to you and get it to you. Good night.